What if the person fated to love you was the one destined to destroy you? Elara thought the mate bond was sacred, until her alpha looked her in the eye and said, "I reject you." But fate doesn't take no for an answer. Their souls are bound by love, torn by prophecy, and hunted by a curse that demands blood. Stay till the end, because in this story, love doesn't save you, it tests you. The night the moon chose to shine on my ruin was so bright, it almost looked cruel. Every silver ray carved shadows between the trees and glinted off the torches the pack had placed around the ceremonial clearing. I used to love that glow. Tonight it felt like a spotlight trained on my foolish hope. They were all there, warriors, elders, even pups clinging sleepily to their mothers, gathered to witness the alpha's choosing. My choosing. Because everyone knew the pull between Ronan Vale and me had been simmering for months, obvious as firelight. The way his eyes found me across the training grounds, the way my wolf surged whenever he drew near, it had been impossible to hide. The moon herself had already chosen. All that remained was for him to speak the words aloud. I smoothed the trembling in my hands and forced my shoulders back. The scent of pine and smoke filled my lungs. I told myself that this was what every she-wolf dreamed of: to be seen, to be claimed, to stand beside her mate beneath the stars. My heart beat so fast it drowned out the drums. Then he stepped forward. Ronan Vale, alpha, warrior, heir to a bloodline older than the hills, walked into the light with the measured calm of someone carrying the weight of the world. The crowd hushed. His presence always did that. He was carved from quiet storms, tall, dark, unshakable. But tonight, something about him looked wrong. Tension knotted his jaw. His eyes, usually clear gray, were a shade darker, like thunderclouds before the break. "Elara Dune," he said. My name came out low, deliberate, heavy with something I couldn't name. My wolf rose, ready to answer him with joy. The mate bond snapped fully awake, a current rushing through my veins, heat and recognition, the wild thrill of destiny. I waited for the words. "I accept you," the promise of forever. Instead, he said, "I reject you as my mate." For a heartbeat, I thought I'd misheard. The words hung in the air, brittle as glass. A collective gasp rippled through the clearing. I could feel eyes on me, pitying, curious, some even satisfied, but all I saw was him. The man who was supposed to be mine, standing so still he might as well have turned to stone. The rejection hit like a physical blow. It wasn't just heartbreak, it was a tearing at the soul. My wolf whimpered, clawing against my ribs, desperate to reach him. The mate bond doesn't die quietly. It snaps and screams and drags her heart with it. I staggered forward, tasting blood from where I'd bitten my tongue. "Why?" It came out a whisper. "Ronan, why?" His throat worked as if he wanted to answer, but the mask stayed in place. "It's better this way," he said, voice clipped. "You're not meant for this life. Not meant." As if the moon had made a mistake. As if fate itself could be wrong. Something inside me hardened. Pride was the only thing keeping me upright. I refused to cry before them, before him. My voice shook, but I forced the words out. "If that's your choice, Alpha Vale, then I accept your rejection." There it was, the final fracture. A cold rush tore through me, leaving emptiness where warmth had been. I felt my wolf's grief as a low, aching howl in my chest, but I swallowed it. I would not fall apart here. I turned and walked away, each step heavy with the weight of every dream I'd ever had. The clearing blurred. I didn't know where I was going, only that I needed to move before the silence broke me. Behind me, someone called my name, but I didn't look back. If I did, I'd break. The forest swallowed me whole. The air was sharp with winter, branches clawing at my arms as I ran. My breath came in ragged bursts, half sob, half growl. The farther I went, the dimmer the pack's voices became, until only the sound of my own heartbeat remained. I fell to my knees near the river, moonlight glittering on the water like shattered glass. My reflection looked like a ghost, eyes red, hair tangled, shoulders trembling. My wolf pressed against the surface of my mind, keening in pain, and I let her cry. For both of us. He'd broken the bond. I'd accepted it. But the strange truth was that I could still feel him. His pain mirrored mine, faint but real, like an echo that refused to fade. Somewhere deep down, I knew this wasn't the end. Fate doesn't unravel so easily. It waits. It punishes. It circles back. And as the night wind whispered through the trees, I swore to the moon that if destiny ever brought Ronan Vale before me again, I wouldn't be the one on my knees. 3 months passed, but it might as well have been 3 lifetimes. Winter stripped the forest bare, leaving everything brittle and gray, fitting really because that's what I had become. Brittle and gray. Something once living that had been left out in the cold too long. I made my home on the outer edges of Packland, in a half-collapsed cabin that smelled like rot and rain. I fixed what I could, reinforced the roof with scavenged boards, and taught myself to sleep with one ear open. Rogues roamed these woods. I wasn't supposed to be here. Rejected wolves never stayed near their old packs, but I couldn't bring myself to leave completely. My body obeyed the boundary lines, even when my heart no longer did. Some nights, I'd still feel him. Not clearly, just the faintest pulse, a ghost of the bond that should have died. I'd wake drenched in sweat, my wolf pacing in circles inside my chest, restless, wild, hungry for something that wasn't coming back. So I worked, I hunted, I fought. I'd become a rogue tracker, taking jobs from traveling traders or the neighboring Silverpelt pack. They didn't ask questions, and I didn't offer answers. It was easier to lose myself in the rhythm of pursuit, following scents through mud and rain, learning how to kill cleanly, how to disappear before dawn. One evening, the sky turned blood red as I followed the trail of 3 rogues through the old pine groves near the river. Their stench was unmistakable: decay, old blood, wet fur. I should have waited for backup, but I didn't have anyone left to call. By the time I found them, the sun had died behind the mountains. I caught them in a clearing, snarling over a deer carcass. They looked up when I stepped into the open, their yellow eyes catching the last scraps of light. Well, one of them sneered. A little lost pup come to play? I didn't bother with words. I shifted. The pain of transformation hit fast, bones snapping, fur erupting, claws bursting through skin, but I welcomed it. In wolf form, there were no thoughts of rejection, no aching memories, just pure instinct. The fight was vicious but short. I took 2 down before the third caught me with a silvered blade hidden beneath his ragged coat. It sliced across my ribs. Pain like molten fire tore through me. I lunged and finished him, but my vision was already narrowing, the edges going black. The poison spread fast. My legs buckled, the forest tilting around me. I collapsed into the snow, breath coming in shallow gasps. My wolf whined, fading into silence. The world grew distant, muffled. I was slipping under when I heard it, a growl that made the ground tremble. Familiar. Terrifying. Ronan. Even half-conscious, I knew that sound. He burst into the clearing like a storm given flesh. His wolf was massive, dark silver fur streaked with ash. He tore through the dead and dying rogues, a blur of claws and fury. The scent of blood filled the air, metallic and cold. Then suddenly he was at my side. I tried to move, but the pain pinned me down. My vision flickered, but I saw his face, human now, kneeling in the snow, his hands slick with my blood. His eyes, those same gray eyes that had once looked at me with rejection, were wild with fear. "Elara," he said, voice hoarse. "Stay with me." I wanted to tell him to go to hell, to remind him that he'd already killed me once. But my mouth wouldn't cooperate. My body was shaking, growing heavier by the second. "Don't." I tried to speak, but darkness swallowed the rest. The last thing I felt before the world went black was his hand on my cheek, trembling. I told myself I was just patrolling the borders, that I was making sure no rogues slipped through. But deep down, I knew I was following her scent. I'd been following it for weeks. I told my beta it was duty. I told myself it was guilt. But the truth? I couldn't stay away. The seer's warning had destroyed everything. If you claim her, she will die. Those words haunted every decision I made. Rejecting her was supposed to save her. But watching her collapse in front of me, blood soaking into the snow, I realized how foolish that was. The bond I'd tried to sever hadn't vanished. It had only gone dormant, waiting, festering. The moment I saw her fall, it snapped awake with a force that nearly brought me to my knees. Her pain hit me like my own. I lifted her into my arms, ignoring the burn of the silver poisoning her blood. Her pulse fluttered weakly against my wrist. She was too light, too pale. I pressed my forehead to hers, just once. "Hold on, Elara," I whispered. "Don't make my mistake mean nothing." Then I shifted, cradling her against my chest as I ran through the forest toward home, toward the pack that would never forgive me for what I'd done. The first thing I noticed was the smell: cedarwood, smoke, and something darker underneath. Familiar. Infuriatingly familiar. My eyes blinked open to dim light filtering through wooden beams. I was lying on soft furs, not the frozen earth where I'd fallen. My ribs burned like someone had poured fire into my veins. Every breath made me wince. Then I remembered. The rogues. The fight. The silver. And him. My heart clenched, hard enough to make me sit up too fast. Pain exploded through my side, and I hissed. A door creaked. Heavy footsteps approached, slow, deliberate. Ronan Vale filled the doorway like a shadow. He wasn't wearing his alpha mask now, no armor, no command, no distance. Just a man with dark circles under his eyes and a jaw clenched so tight it looked painful. His hands were bandaged, and I realized, dimly, that my blood was probably still on them. "You're awake," he said quietly. Every instinct in me screamed to snarl, to fight, to run. But I couldn't even stand without my vision tilting. "Where am I?" "In my house," he said, as if that explained anything. I laughed, bitter and broken. "You have a strange habit of rejecting people and then dragging them home to nurse them back to health." He flinched. Just barely, but I saw it. "Good. You were dying, Elara. The poison would have killed you within an hour. And that would have been convenient for you, wouldn't it?" My voice came out sharper than I intended. One less complication. His eyes hardened. "Don't." That one word was thick with warning, but I was too far gone to care. "What?" "Don't tell the truth? You made your choice, Alpha. You said I wasn't meant for this life. So, why save me?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he walked to the window, staring out at the forest beyond the compound. His posture was stiff, but there was something in the set of his shoulders, something heavy, haunted. "Finally," he said, "because I couldn't lose you again." The silence that followed was unbearable. "Again?" I asked. Ronan turned. His gaze met mine, and I saw something I hadn't before: fear. Not of me, but for me. "There are things you don't understand," he said. "Things I can't explain yet. But when I saw you out there, when I felt you slipping away," his voice cracked slightly, barely perceptible, but enough to freeze me in place. "It tore through me, Elara. Just like that night. I wanted to scream that it wasn't the same, that this pain was his doing. But underneath my anger, something else stirred: confusion. Curiosity. The faint, treacherous tug of the bond that refused to die. He came closer, stopping just out of reach. "You shouldn't be awake yet," he murmured. "Rest. Please." I wanted to spit back another sarcastic remark, but exhaustion dragged me under before I could form the words. The last thing I saw was his expression softening, like the weight of guilt had finally broken through the walls he'd built. Watching her sleep was agony. Every rise and fall of her chest felt like a countdown. The healer had said she'd live, but the poison had nearly reached her heart. I'd sat there for hours, unmoving, afraid that if I looked away she'd vanish again. My wolf paced in circles, restless, desperate to touch her, to mark her, to fix what I'd broken. But I couldn't. Not until I was sure the seer had been wrong. The prophecy had come weeks before the choosing ceremony. The old crone had appeared at the border, claiming she'd seen a vision of my mate's death, a girl with hair like dusk and eyes like sunlight drowning in blood. I dismissed her at first, until she spoke Elara's name. If you claim her, she had said, the moon will take her life to balance your bond. I'd spent days trying to find a loophole, a way to defy destiny. In the end, the only way I could think to save her was to break the bond before it sealed. I thought the pain would fade. I thought I could live with the emptiness. But I couldn't. Seeing her fight alone, half-starved and half-mad in the wilderness, made me realize the truth. Rejecting her hadn't saved her. It had damned us both. Now, with her asleep in my bed, pale but breathing, I made a silent vow. I would find the truth behind the prophecy. And if fate wanted to take her from me, it would have to tear me apart first. When I woke again, sunlight was pouring through the slats in the wall, dust swirling like tiny ghosts in the air. My ribs still ached, but the pain had dulled to a steady throb. Someone had changed the bandages while I slept. The faint scent clinging to them told me exactly who. Ronan. For a long moment, I just lay there, staring at the ceiling. Memories from the night before flickered. His voice, raw with something almost like guilt. The way he'd said he couldn't lose me again. That word had lodged itself in my chest like a splinter. Again. I sat up slowly, testing my strength. My wolf stirred, uneasy. Part of me wanted to sneak out, disappear before he came back. The other part, traitorous and still tethered by that ghost of a bond, wanted answers. I didn't have to wait long. The door creaked, and there he was. No armor this time, just a loose shirt and dark trousers. The alpha stripped of ceremony. He looked tired. The kind of tired that didn't come from sleepless nights, but from years of fighting something invisible. You shouldn't be up, he said. His voice was steady, but I could hear the strain under it. And yet, here I am, I said, folding my arms. Alive. Somehow. He stepped inside, hesitated like he was measuring the distance between us. You shouldn't have been in the borderlands alone. I almost laughed. I wasn't aware I still needed your permission to exist. That earned me a flicker of pain in his eyes. Good. He deserved to feel it. But instead of snapping back, he simply nodded. Fair enough. We stood in silence for a few breaths. Then I asked the question that had been burning since I woke. What did you mean when you said you couldn't lose me again? Ronan's gaze dropped to the floor, then to the window. His jaw tightened. For a moment, I thought he wasn't going to answer. Then he said softly, there's a prophecy. One I've been trying to outrun since before the ceremony. I frowned. A prophecy. Yes. The seer came to me weeks before the moon choosing. She said if I claimed my mate, if I claimed you, you would die. The room seemed to shrink around me. Deep. The word barely made it past my lips. She said the bond between us would bring balance through blood. That the moon would take your life to strengthen the pack. He looked up then, and I saw the torment written in every line of his face. I thought if I rejected you, it would save you. I stared at him, numb. So, you decided to shatter my soul instead. How noble. His expression didn't change, but his voice roughened. You think I wanted to? You think I haven't relived that night every day since? I hear your voice when I close my eyes, Elara. I feel the bond even though I broke it. I feel you, your pain, your anger, everything. Then you didn't break it, I said quietly. You just wounded it. And us with it. He took a step closer. You don't understand. No. I cut him off. You don't understand. You made a choice for me. You didn't ask what I wanted. You played God with our fate. For a heartbeat. He looked like he wanted to argue. Then something shifted. His shoulders sagged, and he looked almost defeated. You're right, he said. I did. And I'd do it again if it meant keeping you alive. The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut through bone. I couldn't look at him anymore. I turned away, toward the window. Outside, the forest stretched endlessly, the sunlight breaking through the trees like a promise I no longer believed in. If what you're saying is true, I said slowly, then you need to find the seer again. I want to hear the prophecy myself. He hesitated. That's not a good idea. I met his eyes, cold and unwavering. You owe me the truth, Ronan. Every word of it. For the first time since I'd known him, the Alpha hesitated, not because of pride or anger, but because he was afraid. Not of me. Of what the truth might cost. I'll find her, he said at last. But if she was right, if the bond means your death, then it's my death to face, I interrupted. Not yours to prevent. He didn't argue this time. He just nodded once, slow and heavy, and left the room. When the door shut behind him, I sank back against the bed, trembling. My wolf pressed against my mind, restless and hungry for answers. A prophecy, a curse, a bond that refused to die. Somewhere deep down, I realized that my rejection hadn't freed me from fate. It had only delayed it. And now, fate was coming due. 2 days later, I was on a horse I didn't want, riding beside a man I didn't trust, heading straight into the one place neither of us should have been. Rogue territory. The sky hung low and gray, promising rain. The forest changed as we rode, denser, quieter, like even the birds knew better than to make noise out here. Every sound set my nerves on edge. I could feel the tension humming off Ronan like static. He'd insisted we travel alone. Less attention, he'd said. I suspected the truth was simpler. He didn't want anyone else knowing how badly he'd broken me. We hadn't spoken much since leaving the pack. Every time I looked at him, I saw that night again, the clearing, the rejection, the hollow in my chest where the bond had torn apart. And yet every time his eyes flicked toward me, I felt the old pull stir, a thread that refused to snap completely. Pathetic, I told myself. You should hate him. But hate is simple. What I felt was anything but. By midday, we reached the edge of the Mirelands, where mist clung to the ground like smoke. The air reeked of decay and magic. The seer lived here, Ronan had said.
Of course she did.
This is where she warned you? I asked, dismounting. He nodded, scanning the treeline. She moves around. Never stays in one place long. But she'll come if she wants to. And if she doesn't, then we find her. Typical Alpha. Always assuming he could force the world into obedience. I followed him through the underbrush until we came to a small clearing. At its center stood a shack so old it looked ready to collapse, every board warped and blackened with rot. Smoke drifted from a crooked chimney. She's here, Ronan said quietly. Before I could answer, the door creaked open. The woman who stepped out looked like she'd been carved from the forest itself, thin as a branch, hair white as frost, eyes pale and gleaming. She smiled when she saw Ronan. The Alpha returns, she crooned. And he brings his ruin with him. Ronan stiffened. You said rejecting her would save her life. The seer tilted her head, studying me. Her eyes felt like cold hands on my skin. Did it? My pulse quickened. What did you mean by the prophecy? I demanded. Tell me the truth. All of it. The woman's expression didn't change, but something sharp flickered in her eyes. The moon demands balance. The bloodline of Vale was forged through sacrifice. Every Alpha-born carries that curse. One day, the bond that should bring power will demand payment. Love and life cannot coexist in your line. Ronan's jaw clenched. You said it was her life. The seer's lips curled into something like a smile. Or yours. That part is always unclear, isn't it? I stepped forward before I could stop myself. So one of us has to die? Not necessarily, she said softly. The curse can be broken, but the price is high. What price? Ronan asked. Her gaze slid between us.
Trust.
Unity. The very thing you shattered. Until you heal what was broken, fate will keep choosing between you. One to live, one to die. The world seemed to tilt around me. My stomach turned cold. Ronan took a step closer to her, his voice low, dangerous. If you lied. I never lie, she said, almost kindly. But truth isn't always what you think it is. Her pale eyes locked on mine. You've already begun to feel it, haven't you? The bond stirring again. The dreams. The pull. I swallowed hard. She was right. Every night since I'd woken in Ronan's home, I dreamed of the moon bleeding red, of his voice calling my name through smoke and flame. The seer nodded as if she could see it in my face. It has begun. You can fight it, but it will find you again. The moon always collects her debt. Before either of us could respond, a gust of wind swept through the clearing, and the woman was gone. Vanished as if she'd never been there. The silence that followed was unbearable. Finally, I turned to Ronan. So what now? He looked at the spot where the seer had stood, his face hardening into the familiar mask of command. Now we find out what it means to heal what was broken. And if we can't? He looked at me then, really looked, and for the first time I saw the fear he'd been hiding under all that control. Then one of us dies, he said. We rode home in silence. The forest seemed to listen, waiting for one of us to speak, but the only sounds were the horses and the wind. The seer's words churned inside me, heavy and cold. Heal what was broken. What did that even mean? How do you heal something that had been torn apart by betrayal? By the time we crossed back into Pack Lands, dusk had bled across the sky. Torches burned along the path to the compound, their light flickering against the watchtowers. It had been months since I'd last set foot here, and now every familiar scent felt like a ghost. The guards at the gate stiffened when they saw me riding beside the Alpha. I caught whispers, "She's back, the rejected one. Why is she with him?" Their curiosity scraped at my skin. Ronan ignored them all, his gaze fixed straight ahead. Inside the main house, he dismounted and offered me a hand. I didn't take it. "I can manage," I said, swinging down on my own. His jaw ticked, but he didn't argue. "You need rest. We'll talk in the morning. I don't take orders from you anymore, remember?"
He sighed.
"You never did." I wanted to hate that he said it softly, like it was a confession. But I was too tired to fight. I went to the guest quarters, locked the door, and collapsed on the bed. That night, the dreams came. I was standing in the clearing from the moon choosing, but the torches burned blue instead of gold. The sky bled crimson, and the air smelled like ash. Ronan stood across from me, his chest torn open, light spilling from the wound. "Elara," he said, voice echoing like thunder. "It's time." When I woke, my heart was pounding. My palms were slick with sweat. The scar from the silver blade ached, glowing faintly under the skin. For a second, I thought it was a trick of the moonlight, until I felt the pulse. It wasn't mine. It was his. I threw on a cloak and stormed down the hall. Ronan's door was half open, candlelight spilling through. He was sitting on the edge of his bed, shirtless, his hand pressed to his chest. Right over his heart, the same faint silver glow pulsed beneath his skin. When he looked up, I saw fear. Real fear. "You feel it too," I said. He nodded, breath ragged. "It started an hour ago. The bond, whatever's left of it, it's bleeding through. Bleeding through." He grimaced, jaw clenched tight. "I can feel your heartbeat. Every pulse, every breath. When you dream, I see flashes." My stomach twisted. "You're saying we're linked again?" "Not like before. It's unstable. It's feeding on something. The seer's curse, maybe." I took a step back, shaking my head.
"No.
I won't be bound to you again. Not like this. Elara." "No." The word came out sharp, trembling. "You don't get to choose for me twice." He stood then, slow and deliberate, closing the space between us. His scent hit me, cedar, storm, and the faint trace of my own heartbeat tangled in his. "You think I want this?" he said quietly. "You think I wanted any of this? I've spent months trying to tear you out of me, and now I can't tell where I end and you begin." The pain in his voice cracked something inside me. For a moment, I saw the man beneath the Alpha, the one who'd carried the curse, the guilt, the love he'd never allowed himself to admit. The silver pulse under my skin flared, bright and hot. I gasped, clutching my ribs. His hand shot out to steady me. The moment he touched me, the pain dulled, but a rush of heat flooded between us, dizzying, magnetic. It wasn't lust. It was something older, deeper, an ancient thread tying us back together whether we wanted it or not. He drew in a shaky breath. The seer said we have to heal what was broken. Maybe this is how. I met his eyes, voice barely a whisper. And if it kills us first? He didn't answer. But I saw it in his expression. He was willing to risk it. That terrified me more than the curse itself. After she left my room, I sat in the dark, watching the faint light pulse beneath my skin. The bond had reawakened, but it wasn't the same. It burned. It hungered. Every beat of her heart echoed in mine. Every breath she took brushed against my ribs. The connection was alive again, but unstable, like a living thing caught between death and rebirth. The seer's words haunted me. Heal what was broken. But how do you heal something when the act of mending could destroy the both of you? For the first time since I'd taken the Alpha's mark, I felt something close to fear. Not of fate, but of losing her again. If the moon wanted blood, she'd have to take mine. The next few days blurred into one long stretch of tension. Too many glances, too many silences, too many moments where the air between us felt charged enough to spark. Ronan tried to keep his distance. I tried harder, but the bond had other plans. It started small, his emotions bleeding into mine, anger flaring in my chest when he argued with his beta, exhaustion dragging me down when he spent hours training the younger wolves. Then it grew worse. If he bled, I felt it. If I cried, he flinched. By the third day, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw flashes that weren't mine. His hands clenched in pain, his heart pounding too fast, his wolf pacing the confines of his mind. It wasn't just connection anymore. It was invasion. When dawn came, I found him in the training yard, shirt off, sparring alone. Sweat slicked his skin, muscles moving like coiled wire. Every strike he threw echoed like thunder inside me. I could feel his frustration as if it were my own. Trying to fight the curse into submission? I asked, stepping into the yard. He froze mid-swing, then turned. His gaze swept over me, wary, exhausted. You should be resting. I'm fine. You're pale. You're annoying. His mouth twitched. Almost a smile, almost human again. You're impossible. And you're still an ass. Something in his eyes softened then, like he was remembering how to breathe. Maybe, he said. But I'm your ass, apparently. I wanted to laugh, but the words hit too close to truth. Don't say things like that, I whispered. It makes it harder to hate you. He dropped his guard a fraction, the fight draining from him. Maybe you shouldn't hate me. I tried forgiveness once, I said. It almost killed me. The silence that followed was taut, stretched thin as wire. I turned to leave, but a sudden, sharp pain slammed through my chest. I gasped, clutching at my ribs. The world spun. Elara. He was beside me in an instant, catching me before I hit the ground. His touch seared, heat and cold all at once. I could feel his heart pounding, in perfect sync with mine, both of them racing out of control. The silver light flared beneath our skin, his and mine, the glow threading between us like veins of molten metal. What's happening? I managed to choke out. Ronan gritted his teeth. The bond's evolving. Or breaking. I don't. He cut off with a growl as the light pulsed harder, throwing shadows across the yard. I could feel something ancient moving through us, something vast and hungry, trying to decide if it wanted to bind us or burn us alive. Then, as quickly as it came, the light vanished. The world snapped back into focus. I was shaking, breathing hard, pressed against his chest. I could feel his heart beating through my palms. For one terrifying, glorious second, everything felt right, like the world had found its balance again. Then I remembered who I was holding, and the spell shattered. I pushed away. Don't touch me, Elara.
No.
Whatever this is, it's killing us. You feel it too. He didn't deny it. His hands curled into fists. Then we have to fix it before it does. I met his gaze, cold and furious. Maybe it's not meant to be fixed. His voice dropped low, dangerous. I won't let the moon take you. Not for me. Not for this. I turned on my heel, my pulse still echoing his. Then you'd better learn how to stop destiny, Alpha. She left me standing in the training yard, the air still humming with the echo of her heartbeat. I wanted to follow, to drag her back, to make her listen, but every time I looked at her, I saw the truth I couldn't face. She was right. The bond was killing us. My beta found me an hour later, jaw tight, eyes wary. Alpha. There's talk among the ranks. They say the rejected mate has returned, that the moon's mark burns again. I clenched my fists. Tell them nothing. They'll see it for themselves soon enough, he said quietly. If it keeps flaring like that. I turned away. Then I'll end it before they do. He hesitated. And if you can't, I didn't answer. Because the truth was, I didn't know how. That night, I stood beneath the full moon and stared at the light washing over the Packlands. It should have felt sacred. Instead, it felt like judgment. I could almost hear the seer's voice in the wind, balanced through blood. And I knew, deep down, that the moon wasn't finished with us yet. By the next moonrise, the nightmares had changed. They weren't just mine anymore. I saw the world through his eyes. Running through the forest at night, claws tearing into earth, the taste of iron and rage in his mouth. His wolf was out of control, and I could feel it. Every snarl echoed in my blood. Every violent heartbeat rattled my ribs. When I woke, the sheets were shredded. My nails had lengthened into claws in my sleep. My wolf was restless, snarling at the walls of my mind, pacing, hungry. She wanted him, wanted the bond, the unity that used to quiet her. But I wouldn't give in. Not yet. By dawn, I was in the forest, barefoot, half-shifted, trying to outrun the ache that crawled under my skin. The woods were silent except for my own ragged breathing. I ran until my legs burned, until the cold air turned my lungs to fire. But no matter how far I went, his presence followed. It wasn't imagination. The bond was alive again, whispering across the distance.
Elara.
His voice brushed the edge of my mind. Not a thought, not a sound, just a whisper in the marrow. I froze, heart hammering. Stay where you are. No, I whispered into the trees. Stay out of my head. You're in pain. I let out a harsh laugh. Whose fault is that? A rustle came from the east, and before I could move, a massive gray wolf stepped out from between the trees.
Ronan.
His fur was darker now, streaked with black, eyes glowing silver. His presence filled the clearing like stormlight. Go away, I said aloud. He shifted, the transformation fast, fluid. In seconds, he was standing before me, bare to the waist, breathing hard. You can't run from this, he said. The bond, our wolves, they're merging again. I don't want it. That doesn't matter. I took a step back, shaking my head. You broke it. You don't get to want it now. He advanced, slow but sure, every movement deliberate. You think I wanted to break it? I did it to save you. Save me? My laugh came out like a growl. You ruined me, Ronan. You shattered my soul because a witch told you a story. His eyes flashed. That witch might have been right. The curse is real, Elara. If we give in, if we seal the bond again, it could kill you. Then maybe it's worth dying for something that's real, instead of living half alive. That silenced him. The air between us pulsed. His chest rose and fell fast, the muscles in his jaw tight. The glow under his skin flared again, and I felt it answer in my ribs, a call and response neither of us could stop. We were standing so close now I could feel the heat from his skin, the pull of something ancient curling between us. My wolf howled in my mind, not in anger, but longing. Then it hit, the surge. The bond roared awake, pouring through us like fire. I gasped as my knees buckled. Ronan caught me, his hands gripping my shoulders, his breath coming fast. The world dissolved into light and sensation. Every memory, every emotion we'd buried came rushing back. His fear, my grief, his guilt, my love. All of it tangled and raw and unstoppable. When it finally subsided, I was trembling. He was still holding me, his forehead pressed against mine. It's fighting us, he whispered. The curse. It doesn't want us together. Then we fight harder, I said, voice shaking. He looked into my eyes, and for a heartbeat, I saw the man I'd loved before all of this, the boy who'd laughed with me by the river, the alpha who'd once sworn the moon had made us for each other. Then his expression darkened. "You don't understand," he said softly. "If our wolves merge completely, there might not be anything left of us to save." "Then we merge," I said.
Together.
He stared at me for a long time, the muscles in his throat working as he swallowed hard. Then, almost in surrender, he said, "You really are going to be the death of me." "Maybe," I said, stepping closer, "but you'll die loved." And when his lips met mine, the world shattered again. Light and darkness, blood and moonlight, two souls colliding in defiance of everything the moon had decreed. When we touched, the bond didn't just heal. It exploded. For a heartbeat, there was no curse, no prophecy, no pact. Just her. My mate. My other half. I felt her pain and her strength, her fury and her forgiveness, and for the first time since the night I broke us, I felt whole. But beneath it all, I also felt the shadow, the same cold presence that had haunted my bloodline for generations. The curse wasn't gone. It was waiting. And as the moon rose higher, I knew the fight had only just begun. The moon rose red. Not pink or gold like the ones we grew up worshipping, but a deep, bloody crimson that turned the forest into a cathedral of shadows. The air vibrated with power, humming through the trees, through my bones, through us. We were standing in the clearing behind the pack house, the same place where he'd once rejected me. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. The bond pulsed beneath my skin, visible now as threads of silver light that raced along my arms and into his where our hands met. "It's happening," I whispered. "The seer said it would start under the blood moon." Ronan's grip tightened around my fingers. "Then we finish it here. Together." The rest of the pack stayed far away. They could feel it. Whatever this was, it wasn't meant for mortal eyes. The earth itself seemed to breathe, a slow, heavy rhythm that matched the pounding in my chest. My wolf was awake and restless inside me, pressing against the edges of my mind. I could feel her fighting for control, not out of defiance, but desperation. She wanted out. She needed out. Ronan's eyes glowed silver. "You feel it too?" I nodded. "She's screaming." "Then let her." And with that, he shifted. The transformation hit him like lightning, bones cracking, fur tearing through skin, eyes blazing brighter than fire. His wolf was massive, ancient, primal. The air rippled with his power. My own shift followed, almost violently. Pain ripped through me, but underneath it was something wild and exultant. When the world steadied, I was no longer a woman standing before an alpha. I was a wolf standing before her mate. For a moment, everything was perfect. Our wolves circled each other, touching noses, the scent of home filling the air. The bond hummed between us, alive and electric. Then the wind changed. The glow around us darkened. The silver light that had bound our bodies began to twist, turning black at the edges. The forest groaned. Shadows spilled from the ground, crawling toward us like smoke given form. The curse. It didn't whisper. It screamed. 1,000 voices, old and hungry, clawing at the edges of our bond. Pain seared through me, and I collapsed onto the forest floor, the world spinning. I could feel it trying to pull us apart again, to devour everything that made us us. Ronan roared, his wolf lunging at the shadows, but his claws passed through them like mist. Every time he struck, they only grew darker, thicker, until they wrapped around his legs and dragged him down.
"No."
My wolf howled, and something deep inside me snapped. I lunged forward, pressing my muzzle against his, forcing the bond wide open. Light exploded between us, burning through the black. For a heartbeat, I saw everything: his childhood, his fear, the seer's prophecy, every sleepless night he'd spent thinking he was saving me. The curse recoiled. Then the world shattered. When I came to, I was human again, lying in the grass, trembling. The shadows were gone, the night eerily still. My skin was slick with sweat, my heart racing. Ronan was kneeling a few feet away, naked and bloodied, breathing hard. His eyes found mine, silver still glowing faintly. "It tried to take me," he said hoarsely. "Take us." But it didn't. I sat up, wincing. "Why?" He looked down at his hands, then at me. "Because you fought it. You opened the bond instead of closing it. You gave it what it wanted, connection." The air was still humming, faintly alive. I could feel the bond between us now, steady but fragile, like glass after a storm. "Is it over?" I asked. He shook his head.
No.
"It's only dormant. It'll come again." I met his gaze. "Then we'll face it again. Together." For once, he didn't argue. He just nodded, and for a moment, the weight that had hung between us for so long seemed to ease. But deep inside, I could still feel it, the faintest whisper of the curse, slithering through the bond like smoke waiting for wind. It wasn't gone. Not yet. And the moon above us burned red as blood. When I looked at her, I knew the truth. The curse hadn't wanted to destroy us, it had wanted to test us. The seer had called it balance. Maybe that was what it meant, proving that love could survive the darkness it created. But balance demands sacrifice, and the moon wasn't done with us. "Elara," I said quietly, "if it wakes again, if it tries to claim one of us." She cut me off. "It won't, because next time, it won't find fear between us." I almost smiled. "You sound certain." She brushed a strand of hair from her face, eyes steady. "Because I finally understand something you never did." "What's that?" "You can't save someone from fate. You can only choose to face it with them." Her words sank deep, quiet but unshakable. For the first time, I felt the curse tremble, not in rage, but in recognition. And I realized she was right. The moon didn't stay red for long. Within a week it began to wane, the sky settling into the soft gray of early spring. The pack moved through their days like nothing had happened, but I could feel it, the echo of the curse still humming under our skin. It watched, patient, waiting. I slept beside the window every night, watching the stars fade one by one. Each time I closed my eyes, I saw flashes, a forest burning, the river running silver, Ronan's face half-lit in moonlight. The bond throbbed with those visions, alive and uneasy. On the 7th night the ache sharpened. The air in the cabin turned cold, my breath fogging in front of me. A whisper slithered through the dark. "Balance, Elara." The curse had found its voice again. I stumbled to my feet, the floorboards groaning under me. "No," I said aloud. "You don't get to take this from me again." The wind blew the door open. Outside, the world glowed with pale fire. The moon hung low, white this time, but a halo of black shadow ringed it like an eclipse. Ronan was already waiting in the clearing. Shirtless, barefoot, eyes shining silver. "It's calling," he said. "I know." "We end it now." I nodded once. Fear fluttered in my stomach, but underneath it was something stronger. Resolve. Whatever the curse demanded, it would not get obedience. He reached for my hand. The bond flared, silver light weaving between our fingers, brighter than before. For a heartbeat, I thought it would hold. Then the ground split open. A scream tore through the air, not human, not wolf, something older. Shadows poured from the crack, swirling upward, shaping themselves into a single form, tall, faceless, draped in smoke. "Balance," it said again, voice echoing inside our heads. "One life, one death. The bond must pay." Ronan stepped forward. "Take me?" My heart lurched. "No." He looked back at me, eyes calm, almost gentle. "It was always supposed to be me, Elara. My bloodline, my curse." I shook my head. "We face fate together, remember?" He smiled then, tired, sad, beautiful. Together doesn't always mean side by side. Before I could stop him, he drew a blade from his belt, the same silver one that had once poisoned me, and sliced it across his palm. Blood hit the ground, hissing like steam. The shadow shrieked, recoiling, its form flickering. The bond between us roared to life, pain tearing through my chest as if his wound were mine. "Ronan, stop." He didn't. He took another step toward the figure. The light around us blazed white, burning away the darkness inch by inch. Then suddenly I understood. The curse wasn't demanding death, it was demanding choice. It wanted to see if love could defy instinct, if sacrifice could come freely instead of through fear. I grabbed the blade from his hand and cut my own palm. Our blood hit the ground together. The shadow screamed once, high and wild, then dissolved into smoke that drifted upward and vanished into the night. When the light faded, we were both on our knees, breathless. The wound on my hand had already sealed. The mark on his chest, the faint silver scar of the bond, was gone. The world was silent again. Peaceful. Ronan looked up at me, bewildered. "Is it?" "It's over," I said. I could feel it. No curse, no weight, just quiet. The bond was still there, but different now.
Free.
He laughed then, soft and disbelieving. "You really do like ruining my plans." I smiled through tears. "You make terrible ones." He reached out, brushing his thumb across my cheek. "So, what now?"
Now.
I took his hand and pressed it to my heart. "Now we live. The moon can watch if she wants, but she doesn't get to choose for us anymore." The first light of dawn spilled across the clearing, turning the world gold. Somewhere in the trees, our wolves stirred, peaceful, whole, waiting for the next hunt. For the first time in my life, the silence didn't hurt. It felt like beginning. When the sun broke over the horizon, she was still beside me, alive and unbroken. For years I'd carried the weight of my family's curse, believing that love and life could never coexist. She proved me wrong. She made the moon blink. I looked at her, hair tangled, eyes bright, and realized the bond didn't need fate to define it anymore. It was ours. The forest whispered, the wind soft again. Somewhere far away, a new day began. And this time, we faced it not as alpha and mate, not as cursed and savior, but as equals, together. Sometimes love isn't about destiny choosing for you. It's about standing in the fire and choosing each other anyway. Elara and Ronan broke a curse older than blood. Not with magic, not with power, but with something far more dangerous: hope. If their story left your heart aching just a little, if you believe in love that defies fate, then you're exactly where you belong. Subscribe for more dark fantasy love stories, where curses break, hearts heal, and the moon always watches. Because even in the darkest worlds, love still finds a way.